That's my favorite. Kank. Mike, you know you love it, brother. Kank. Welcome everybody back to Pencil to Pencil, your favorite pandemic podcast, brought to you weekly at 8 o'clock EST on Wednesday Eve. Is your best bud and mine, Michael Manley. There you are. Hey, Mike. Say hi, Mike.
There I am. Right.
There you are.
Sponsored by me.
Mike, I'm loving that shirt, brother.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I just got this today. I knew. You know, you got to dress it up a little bit for the podcast.
Well, you got to keep it. You got to keep it. You got to keep
get a kank shirt too. You know.
I remember we used to talk about the when dudes have the cake that means you got the washboard.
Yeah, right here. It's right there. See, I can wash anything. I can wash anything right here.
That's hilarious. My good bud Mike Manley, the Master Chief of Comics. We don't do this enough, Mike Manley. We don't talk about what we're doing. Mike Manley, I'm going to big him up. Is a acclaimed comic book artist. You may know him from co-creating Darkhawk from his heydays at Marvel. You drew Quasar. You did a magnificent run on Batman. You've been all over the map. You've worked on almost every publisher that meant something in this business. Struck his way into self-publishing. Got into animation, was doing storyboards for probably your favorite cartoon when you were coming up. Mike probably worked on that. Then started the magnificent Draw magazine from Tomorrow's Publishing. Our buddy John Morrow publishes it over there. Into drawing 2 legacy comic strips at the same time. Unprecedented. Mike draws The Phantom, and he also illustrates Judge Parker, probably in your daily paper. So, Mike,
maybe we can hope. We can hope. We can hope it's in your daily paper.
Hey, real quick, Mike, our good buddy Matt Waringa. What up, Matt? Matt says, Mike, been enjoying your Frank Robbins post on Twitter this week.
Oh, thanks, Matt. Yeah, I decided to share some of the pages from my my collection here. Over the years, I collect original comic strips.
It's so buttery.
So I'm a big Frank Robbins fan from, I guess, back in the 70s, when it was actually, when I first started buying comics. When I was a little kid, I could only get DC comics, and for some reason in my neighborhood, I couldn't get Marvel comics. But when we would go to Canada, I would get, the occasional Marvel comic, like an issue of Spider-Man or whatever. But my dad got a part-time job, and I would go and help him with it. And across the street was a drugstore, and in that drugstore, they sold Marvel comics. So when I started buying Marvels was when Frank Robbins was doing his run on Captain America. So for me, it was cool, right?
Yeah.
But he was one of those artists, I think, that a lot of people did not like, because it was not like in that Neil Adams kind of Bernie Wrightson, Jim Aparo, more realistic sort of school. Yeah. He was much more of the comic strip school, which the Kniff school.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people didn't like his sort of more cartoony take, but I always liked it. So, and then later on, I started collecting comic strips and comic art when I got into the business, partially as a way to learn the craft, because you could buy a cheap page and then you could see, oh, that's how you ink something. This is a brush, this is a pen, stuff like that. So yeah, I've been a big Frank Robbins fan since I was a kid.
And that's one of the things I love about Pencil to Pencil, is that we can touch on so many lines in the timeline of cartooning. It's not just the modern stuff or webtoons, or it's not just the heyday of Marvel stuff in the mid to late 80s, and it's not even like we could talk about Yellow Kid We could talk about Winsor McKay strips. We could, we cover the spread, right? And I think that's one of the coolest things about being a cartoonist is that you're a student, right? I don't really know any cartoonists who call themselves that as a profession and lifestyle who don't know their history. I think it's almost counterproductive to call yourself that and not know this stuff. I don't know how you feel about that, Mike.
Yeah, and you're connected to that history whether you acknowledge it or know about it or not, because I mean, we're all using this language and are influenced by people that are influenced by other people that were influenced by other people. So whether that original people that were doing it or not,
right,
you're still speaking that language.
Right.
I mean, Kniff and Raymond and Foster were like the three real giants, as far as realism. And all the comic first, generation, the great generation of guys like Kirby and people like that, they were all influenced by those guys. And then later on, the next generation of people like Adams and Wrightson, down through John Byrne, down through Jim Lee, down through, where did I put it?
He's just got original strips laying around on the floor.
No, I just
Where's that Kirby? Oh, here it is.
I just picked up this reprint.
Yeah.
All right, no, and we interviewed Chris in the magazine, Chris Amney, but this guy is very much influenced by that Toth and Kniff, that whole school. So you're still seeing echoes of that idea, that style, that way of thinking today in contemporary comics. Even if I'm sure somebody picked this up, doesn't know who the hell Alex Toth is, doesn't know who Frank Robbins is, doesn't know who Milton Kniff or Noel Sickles. They don't know anything about that, but yet you are seeing something that's directly influenced by that.
Right. Yeah. So Pencil to Pencil is, I don't know, I guess it's kind of like a history lesson on cartooning.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay. All right. We'll say that.
Yeah.
So let me introduce myself. My name is Jamar Nicholas, the ambassador of Philadelphia. I have lots of nicknames. The Kevin Bacon of comic books, Mike Manley.
I think you're the only one who says that. the grand poobah. No, you're the Kevin Bacon, I think, because you know all these people in a lot of different worlds, right?
That's very true.
A lot of the former indie All-Star Indie Underground. Indie All-Star Underground. What was it?
The Indie Cred All-Stars. Yeah.
There you go. Right.
Yeah, and everyone in between, right? And I get to hang out with you, Mike, and Brett and Art Adams and Walt and all those type of crazy names, And I also keep my ear to the ground and see who's coming up. So there's the art form's always moving forward, and I like to make sure that I kind of keep, my fingers in lots of pies. I also am a cartoonist in good standing. I just secured a series at Scholastic Graphics where I'll be drawing my book Leon for a new generation of readers. I'm very excited.
Right behind you. He's right behind you, right there.
Oh yeah, there he is. So I'm very excited that we get to be on here and be experts, Mike. That's what I'm always saying, those crazy titles before your name.
We should wear lab coats then. We should wear lab coats.
And tonight, I'm going to bring in our very special guest, but let me just give a shout out to our sponsors. You see the John up there, the ever-present John. I'm totally repping Philly tonight. Our good buddies at Graphically sponsor Pencil to Pencil, and they also create Clip Studio Paint. That's right, that Clip Studio Paint. And I already gave a shout out to John Morrow, our publisher for Draw Magazine. I'm sure John has a sale on, as Mike has said in the last couple of episodes. They are clearing out the physical copies of Draw Magazine. So if you haven't completed your set yet, go cop it.
Go get it now once it's gone. But you will always be able to get digital copies. And I believe that John does still have a digital bundle. So you can get all the copies and get a nice price break on it.
That's right. We'll always have Paris, Mike Manley.
Right. And then it's a PDF, so you can actually print it all out yourself and bind it into a giant tome, and then you could have all the draws.
That's right. Get all the draws.
All the draws.
I'm gonna tattoo that on my stomach. Get all the draws.
I actually know somebody who has a draw magazine, has a draw logo tattooed on their body.
Oh right, I think it's one of our buddies, right? I think it's Blair who has that.
Yeah, Blair. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, you guys, you're in for a treat. Tonight we have my good buddy Yehudi Mercado, who is going to be hanging out with us for the evening. I'm a huge fan of his. I used to say this thing about Mike. If you ever been to a comic book convention, maybe not so much you, maybe me, and maybe people like Yehudi and other people we know who walk by your table and then they kind of do that. They like back up, like they walk it back. They're like, yo, where you come from? Is this your first convention? Is this your first comic book? Like you just fell out of a tree, right? Like you didn't exist before they, you ready for it? Discovered you, right? I like to call that Columbusing. I was walking down the street. Oh, look, I just bumped into a whole country.
No, that also goes with the people that walk by your table when you make eye contact. They move a little bit further away, right? It's like, oh no, he's going to make me come over and buy. Don't talk to me.
That's right.
Don't talk to me. I don't want to buy your stuff. I don't want to feel bad.
I'm at the convention and I don't want your stuff, and that's always a pressure thing. But I walked by Yehudi's booth, and it's almost like, it's just kind of like you have like this connection with people or their work or even the setup of their table. Like, yeah, that's it. And I think he was pimping Sci-Fu at the time. And I bought one and he hooked me up with all this, like a fat pack with like, there's a cassette tape and there was like playing cards and there's all this stuff. And I went back to my table like, yeah, that's what's up. And it's very rare that you feel great about something at a comic book show, Mike. You know what I'm talking about.
That you feel great at a comic book show, because usually you had to pull like 2 all-nighters to get there. So the first day you're kind of blurry.
So, just from that, I got on the Yehudi bandwagon, and I've been following him ever since. I've been fortunate enough to have some conversations with him. We follow each other on social media, and my man is always busy. If we talk about, I don't even know I don't want to call this hustle culture or grinding, but there's people who are about their business, right? And there's also people who look at people who are about their business and wonder, how do you do that? How are you at these places? How'd you get into this? How'd you get another book published? But, my man's about his work, and we're going to get to talk to him, get to learn a little bit more about how he got into the business.
Pry his secrets from him.
That's right. And where he's going next. So welcome to the podcast, Yehudi Mercado. Welcome, my brother. Hold on. Let me give you the cake, and then we'll bring you in.
Oh,
cake.
He's been rendered. We just rendered you.
Yeah, that's right. You got rendered.
Yeah.
How are you, brother?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, sorry.
It's an honor. Yeah.
Sorry, I had to sit in the green room all that time, but I had to paint the picture. So thanks for joining us tonight. And I just kind of want to get started by talking about. It's very rare that I kind of like fanboy for people. You know what I mean? That's kind of like a weird thing, but I love your work, and I'm not exactly sure about the circles you keep, because you seem like you fly solo a lot. I don't really see you rolling with a crew. But one of my things is that I always try to just big up other people and just put shine on other people because it's deserved, and that's something that kind of you don't see a lot of that in our business.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. It feels like everyone wants theirs, and then they feel like plugging someone else is taking away from their sales. Right.
That's exactly how I feel about stuff. So anyway, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
We talked a little bit before we went on air about just kind of like being in these different climates. Before we got on air, I put on a thing on our Facebook that the Philly area has been having like all these category storms.
Do
you get those alerts on your phone where it's like, bah?
Yeah.
all afternoon. First, it was high wind alert, then it was flood, then it was hurricane, and then the last one was tornado. Like maybe 30 minutes before.
Really?
Right. So I'm really surprised we got on. And you're in California, and I had asked Yehudi about what was the vibe out there in California, because I remember the orange skies from not too long ago.
That's right.
So
last summer was very scary. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, how's the environment out there right now? Is it kind of like back to normal?
Sort of. Yeah. It feels like, definitely like we're not getting the smoke and stuff that we did last summer. There's huge fires right now near Lake Tahoe, and that'll probably work its way down here later this week. But yeah, it feels like, because like last summer, you had the all the protests, and then you had the people like smashing windows, and then you get these alerts like stay away from downtown LA, and like it feels like this summer is like a little bit of
a breather.
Relief. Yeah.
Well, wait a minute. We don't get those kind of alerts in Philly because it's always popping in Philly. They don't say stay away.
The alert is like,
it's always at a constant red level.
Yeah. They're tired. They're like, I can't.
Yeah.
I can't push the button anymore.
Only so many shades of red you can.
Yeah, that's right. I don't. I tried to introduce you and Mike earlier in the thing, and I'm very curious just about kind of your beginning in the business and how long you've been around, and as we call it on the show, your origin story. So if you wouldn't mind kind of giving us a little bit of how you got here.
Yeah. So a little bit about me. I grew up, born in Mexico City, but primarily grew up in Houston, Texas. And then I grew up in Texas, and I always drew a lot as a kid. So I was always like drawing cartoons. And my father's an artist; he's a painter, and we always had like art supplies around the house, and markers, and like the non-standard like Crayola stuff. Like we had like the real deal inks that you had to like
poison
and
poison.
Exactly. Yeah. I know my dad would keep all the markers like in this like tin can. You would open it and be like,
oh, like the old school, like the designer markers.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Like 30 different shades of gray.
Right. Yeah. Get that lung full of Bestine.
Exactly. So I was always drawing as a kid. Collected the superhero comics. Subscribed to like X-Men and Daredevil as a kid, and then really got into comic strips like Calvin and Hobbes and Garfield, and like Bloom County was like a huge one, like for me, like so I love comedy, so like then I started to lean more towards like reading all those kind of comic strips and stuff. And then in high school, that's when I got into theater and acting and like drama school.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and so like I was like performing on stage, and then writing my own plays and stuff with friends. And then it was really only until college that I decided to merge like my drawing skills and my acting skills, and decided to sort of focus on animation. So that was sort of my first idea, was like, okay, I'm going to be an animator, going to try to be a Disney animator. This is 2D animation back then. This is pre Toy Story CGI.
Right.
But I could never get into like any. I tried to, I applied to Cal Arts, and like Cal Arts is, it's a art school that's basically like the feeding school for all of, like, the animation industry.
Yeah.
And it's so selective and so small. Like they cap their student body to like 1,000 students, and like they only let in the number that graduate. So it's like really competitive, really hard to get into. I would. Applied every year, never got in.
So how many years did you apply?
3 years. Yeah, 3 years.
Wow.
And at that time, I was going to University of Texas at Austin, and there wasn't really animation in the fine arts department. It was like painting and design and stuff. And like, I even asked my counselor, like, hey, are there any animation classes? And they like scoffed at me, like as if I said a dirty word. Like,
right.
So while I was going to University of Texas at Austin, learning all the fine arts stuff, I went to the Austin Community College, and that had all the computers and Adobe and Photoshop and Flash, Flash animation. Oh, there we go.
Oh, there.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Flash flood.
Exactly. I won't say Flash again.
Yeah. All right, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So I learned all the commercial arts skills at the community college while I learned the fine arts skills at the university.
It's fun. Now, around what year was this? This was going on.
This was 1990. I went to college in 92, and then through the mid 90s, and I graduated in 97.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and things were much more separated then than they are now, because now all the stuff is, including comics, because you probably at the big college, if you said, "Is there a course in comics?" It'd be like comic books.
Yeah, I know. Like when I went the fine arts department at UT, they had benefactors gifting them computers, and they held off for the longest time. They didn't want free computers. They were like, "We don't want our students to learn the computer and do art on the computer." And it's like,
we want them to have a soul.
Yeah. So then I was taking traditional animation classes at Austin Community College, and this was the pencil on paper where you had to roll the pages and you had to pay remember you had the pegboards with the special animation holes.
Yeah.
And just the paper, the hole puncher for those, that thing cost $300 back then.
Yeah, I remember that.
It was just the same one that you could buy in Staples. It just was spaced different.
Yeah. It was so annoying. Yeah. So I went through thousands of pages, trying to do my comics. Basically I had this this cartoon I'd been working on since I was in high school, called Cartoonist, and it was this cat character who was almost like a proxy of Charlie Chaplin. My grandfather really got me into Charlie Chaplin and the Marx Brothers, and I wanted to sort of dedicate this sort of cartoon character to all the comedy he showed me, and so I had this cat character that I would animate, and basically taking all the the comedy beats and story beats from Chaplin films. This sort of silent cat character.
I was going to ask, did you kind of have that throwback style to him, kind of
yeah. I didn't do the Betty Boop. But then what was crazy was, so I finished this this whole piece with Spencer and the Cartoons, and then Animaniacs comes out, and it's almost the exact design. And I was like, holy crap, I gotta start over because everyone's gonna think I ripped off Animaniacs. Literally same. And I know that that show also borrowed from Marx Brothers and Chaplin and old comedy. So
all the old cartoons did. All they did was borrowed from the live action guy. I mean, Mickey Mouse is Charlie Chaplin.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's the tradition of animation, is they find out whoever was popular. And we were talking about this, I think, on one of the last podcasts, where you would watch those Warner Brothers cartoons as a kid, and they would have these stars in there that you didn't know who they were.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And go, who's that guy? But you didn't know. Maybe you might know Bing Crosby or somebody.
Right.
But there's all these other.
Who's the guy with the ears and the weird eyes?
Or Eddie Cantor. All these like weird characters. So, but as a kid, you knew they were supposed to be somebody.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So, I finished this sort of like 5-minute short with this cartoons and this cat.
That's a lot of work. 5 minutes, man.
Oh yeah, and we only had one shot to do the pencil test because it was like on VHS, and you only could like schedule it at your finale.
Yehudi, do you remember what were you using Lunchbox back then? What were you guys shooting with?
Remember? It was Lunchbox. Yeah. And this whole rig, and it had this separate room, and you couldn't that was like one take, and that was it. like in a couple of frames, I accidentally hit the button and my finger was like in the frame. And it was like, well, I guess it's going to be in there forever.
Now, did you submit your pencil tests along to CalArts to try to get in?
Yeah. Still did not get in. Yeah.
Did they give you any feedback? Because there's a lot of young people that watch this who also try to get in Art Center and Sheridan and places like that, and Ringling, where I know like sometimes you don't get in the first time, sometimes you don't get in the third time.
Yeah. Well, and then even I learned later, like the median age of people who got into CalArts at that time was like 27. So it was people who had already like graduated college and like maybe were even working in the industry, and then they get in. Like
so they were like 17-year-olds just rolling right out of high school going into CalArts. There was not as many.
But wait, you asked me something. Oh yeah, the feedback was basically I needed to concentrate more on life drawing, like figure drawing with real figures. So like during summers when I would go back from Austin, go back home to Houston, I would take life drawing classes at the Glassell, which is part of the museum in Houston.
Instructed or uninstructed?
No, instructed. Yeah, with live.
Because that's the other thing is like you can go take a life drawing class. Like I had life drawing classes the first time in college, and although I had an instructor, he wasn't really instructing. He was more like a monitor.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, this one like you had to. There was a barrier to get in. It wasn't just sort of like pay $5 and then you're in. Like
right.
You had to like show a portfolio to get into the class.
Oh, okay.
So that the instructor could, that was great. Like, so that helped. Still didn't get into CalArts, but like breaking down those figures and like really just concentrating, like, intensive, like, a couple of summers, just all summer, like concentrating on figure drawing. Like, feel like that helped me.
Yeah.
Now, did you have that? Because I always talk about this to people that I'm teaching that might struggle in the beginning. I was a person that had like no life drawing really until I was serious life drawing until I was in my 40s. So one of the things that would happen when I would occasionally do life drawing is I spent all that time drawing from my imagination.
Right. Exactly.
And then you see the person, and then it's like you're not really looking at. You're still drawing from what you have in your head. I don't know if you experienced any of that.
Oh yeah, yeah. And my style would be cartoony. From a kid, since I was a kid. So like, trying to break that mold of like, stop doing the caricature of this person and concentrate on trying to draw this person. But I really loved the gesture drawing, like when they would do quick poses, like, because that's what you got to do for animation. So like, 30-second poses, like they pose, you try to capture that, as quickly as possible before they moved on to the next pose. Like I feel like that's a great exercise that I always tell people they need to like to concentrate on. Yeah.
Now I usually play the role of the devil's advocate or the layman on the show a lot. Like I'll say things like, "Yo, how you make that look real? That look real. That apple look real. How you make it look real?" And I also kind of, I always get smite, and also just kind of like really basic, like, well, I don't understand how you made it and other people didn't type of question. But it already seemed like you had this really high drive to keep moving forward. Did you come up against any resistance in your like outside circle of your life or your family or anybody that was like, why are you doing this?
Yeah, even though my father's an artist, but he's also an architect. Like, so he has like the career as an architect. But I remember my grandfather telling me like, "What? Can't you be a dentist and an animator?" Like
a dentimator.
Right. You have to have the traditional fallback job. Yeah. Now, when you were in college and you were doing the life drawing, I don't know what kind of artist your dad was. Is he a representational or abstract, or is he into the Mexican muralists like Diego Rivera and all that?
Yeah, so he actually went to art school with Sergio Aragones in Mexico.
Oh, okay.
Aragones was like, I think he was maybe like 3 years ahead of him. But my dad would always like talk about like how like Sergio, like at the school, Sergio would like draw on every surface of he could, like paper, walls, doors, everything. So, but yeah, like he tended, he could do the realistic paintings, but he liked abstract. I think like if you're planning buildings and being like hyper specific with architecture, like I feel like doing more abstract, like
Right.
like almost cubist looking. Like he does a lot of like sort of angular sort of shapes, creating faces. Like
yeah, and that was a big thing in the culture of Mexico from that time of Rivera and everybody doing those working in that fashion, because I think, and they continue to do that. I mean, I have some books on that because we used to have a big mural in the art museum in Detroit done by Diego Rivera, which always just fascinated me as a kid seeing
that. Yeah, that stuff is amazing. Yeah.
Well, I don't mean to sidetrack you, but yeah.
Yeah. So then, but I hadn't graduated UT yet because UT wouldn't accept my animation credits from ACC as art.
Of course they wouldn't.
So like I was about to graduate, they were like, "Oh, you're 1 credit shy." Like you
always,
right? I don't have drawing 1. I was like, "What?" Like I can show you I've drawn more than any of your students ever have. So basically, I had to like spend 1 extra semester helping an art professor do his website because I knew how to do computers, and this guy knew how to turn on a computer. Yeah, so I had to pay an entire semester's worth of tuition to do this guy's website.
Isn't that always fascinating? Not to like get too deep into this, but it seems like there's some people that just skate right through with no problems, and other people are like climbing up a muddy hill.
Oh yeah.
No,
but I did catch a break. So the cartoons, that animation I did on pencil, was part of this. Like it was all on VHS. So all the students of that class, had their shorts all back to back to back to back. So a classmate of mine was applying for a job at a video game company in Austin called Human Code. They were looking for animators and artists, and they, the art director was like looking through portfolios and like the people who submitted, and they accidentally let the tape go long, and he saw mine.
Oops.
Yeah. So like this was my one lucky break. Like I did catch a break on this. So like the guy, the art director Blake, was like, "Ooh, I like Mike's and I like this guy Yehudi's. Like, tell them to call me." And then so the teacher told Mike and I, like, "Oh, this art director is looking for a position to fill. He says call him." So and I called first and got the job. And I always tell like my nieces and nephews and like anyone asking, like, always call first. Like,
gotta have hustle.
That door opens.
Yeah.
Call first. Like, so I always credit that with like getting my foot in the door, and then like, so basically I had a full-time job at that video game company before I even graduated from UT.
Wow.
That's great.
Yeah. So then my family was like, "Oh, okay, maybe."
Okay, you're okay.
All right. Yeah.
Right. They'll stop leaving those UPS applications on your desk, right?
Yeah. So suddenly I go from delivering pizzas to then like being this animator, and that was a great experience. So like I feel like I because I worked so much in college, like basically going to 2 different colleges and like night jobs, and like my summers were going to like art classes, and like that this company Human Code in Austin almost became my college experience,
right.
Like that's like I'm still friends with those people, and like it was great to be in this floor of like low cubicles of all artists and like joking around, having fun. And this was like right when like Star Wars Episode 1 came out, and like I just feel like it was such a magical time in my life. Like hanging out with these people and
getting paid to learn.
Yeah, and getting paid well. Like I was making more than my father because this was the .com boom of that time, like before 9/11, before the .com bubble burst. But like I was like suddenly like making a ton of money, and like Yeah, it was great. Like
Yeah.
we were making edutainment games. So like
Okay.
we were working on like Schoolhouse Rock games and like Disney games and Nickelodeon games. And so then I got to like draw in several different styles.
Mm-hmm.
So that I feel like helped me adapt to like these different styles and trying out different styles.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, like I really thrived at this company and like worked my way up to being like this sort of like creative director and like
Oh wow.
pitching my own ideas for games. So
Mm-hmm.
like early on, I would see like in like this is sort of like where my business side comes in also, where there were these games that were like aimed for girls, and they were called these Purple Moon games, and they're very touchy feely, like not really games, almost like activity packs.
Right.
And we were, there were all these games for boys traditionally. So I thought to myself, like, well, what if I try to develop an action game for girls, like aimed at girls, girl characters, like friends that are girls. So I basically came up with this idea called First Daughter. And it was like, you're the daughter of the president and you're secretly a spy and you're the one saving the world. And it was like almost like a Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Like she had to keep it secret from her father, but like there's like this like spy room underneath the White House where she like could communicate with other spies, and like
that's really
like,
cool.
Yeah, she finds out like since like George Washington's daughter was the first spy, and like it was the lineage of all the daughters of presidents who were like sort of helping to save the world. So I came up with this whole idea, characters, the style, and then Hasbro loved it, and they were like, we want to buy this, we want to make it into a PlayStation game. And it was going to be like, I don't even remember Oddworld. Remember that game, Oddworld? It would be like a side scroller where you had to like sneak around. So not like shoot 'em up, but like like more about like stealthily like sneaking through.
Puzzle solving and things like that.
Puzzles.
Yeah.
And so like I was like, holy shit, like this is it. Like I made it. Like Hasbro's gonna make this game, and then they had the hub, like that was their cable channel, the hub where they were making like they do all the My Little Pony animated series back then. So they were like, oh, we're gonna make this into a game and a cartoon, and I was like, this is it. I've made it. Like,
you've reached the top
my
of the
hard
mountain.
work.
Yeah.
And then Bubble Burst, boom, like Hasbro was like, we're not gonna make any games that aren't part of our board games. Like we're gonna double down on doing like Battleship and just all the stuff they already own.
Yeah.
New original stuff. And then that's it. Like it was shelved. I was like,
no, did it go back to you? Do you still have ownership of it?
Yeah. So yeah, I still own it. Yeah.
That's pretty hot. I like that idea.
Thanks. Yeah. But then what happened was like, okay, then I get it back. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe I'll just pitch this as an animated series myself. And then Kim Possible comes out. And it's like, shit. Like this, it's almost like stylistically it looks like the exact same thing. So like, just like with the Animaniacs and the Cartoons, it feels like I'm on the right track. Just someone is like beating me to it every time.
Right.
Like that feels like that's a running thing with my whole career.
Yeah.
So like that gets canceled, and then Bubble Burst, like the Human Code, the company gets bought by this other big company, and then we're put on like bank websites and like not don't want to do like games anymore.
Wow.
So then of course we all get laid off, and then from there, me and 3 other friends from that company decide like, fuck it, like let's just start our own animation studio. Like
sure, yeah.
So we made contacts with like Scholastic Interactive and like from the clients we had at Human Code, like doing the edutainment games. So basically leveraged all that. We formed this animation studio in Austin. It was called Horseback Salad, which was a reference to the Salvador Dali and the Marx Brothers. And yeah, we were off and running. Like the idea was like, we like take on these like animation jobs for hire. We'll do like commercials, music videos, all the while, I pitch shows that then we would get to animate. And so that was sort of the cycle, like, but we never had any like sort of like huge financial backing. It was all just us bootstrapping it. And we did okay for a while, but it was fucking exhausting. Like,
sure. No, I can imagine
running a company and being the creative director and being business development and like doing everything was like just like exhausting. But we did get we landed like a pretty big deal where I got to write and co-write and direct this straight to DVD animated series based on the Trevor Romaine books. I don't know if you remember Trevor Romaine. It's like self-help for kids.
Oh, okay.
So one of his books is called How to Do Homework Without Throwing Up. And they're big sellers. And bullies are a pain in the brain. They're kind of self-help, and there's no narrative. So I helped him write them as a narrative and turn them into these sort of straight to DVD, almost like specials. They were 30 to 45 minutes, and there was he's an artist also, so we would incorporate live action bits of him, and we would do the animated segments, and then they'd all have these sort of lessons taught, but it wasn't too I try to make it super entertaining while also teaching a little,
Right. Yehudi, I have a question about that.
Yeah.
So this is around that time frame where I remember a lot of interactive games and a lot of interactive things like that, but it was almost like the technology hadn't really caught up to what you guys were trying to do.
Oh, yeah.
So it was a really choppy or low res.
I mean, we would
stuff.
animate it full res, but this was pre-YouTube. The biggest video you could put online was 480 pixels by 380, 360. That was the biggest video file, and it took 30 minutes to load, and then you could watch it. So I feel we were way ahead of our time on that one.
Right.
And then also ahead of our time. So we would also that was straight to DVD, and there'd be some interactive-ish stuff on the website for it. And then, but that also basically put me through the paces of almost the whole vertical slice of creating an animated series, writing the script, storyboarding it, designing the backgrounds, designing the characters, doing the model sheets. We would do it in Flash, so it was all vector based. So creating these puppets for it, and this was all before any show was doing this. I feel like one of the first shows on cable that did everything in Flash was a SpongeBob ripoff called Coconut Fred.
Right.
It came and went very quick.
Or sort of like what the Happy Tree Friends were doing, where you'd make all the assets.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you'd build a library, and then it would almost be puppeting. Yeah. So we were doing that pre Happy Tree Friends. Yeah, so we were almost inventing this new process of animating as we were going.
Right.
And we were able to crank out full 30-minute episodes, and they look pretty good. I mean, there's still some puppeting, and it's not full traditional animation, but for a skeleton crew, we didn't really have to farm out to Korea.
Right.
We were hiring locally in Austin for the most part.
Wow.
And we would, and so at that time also there was a traditional animation studio in Austin called Heart of Texas Animation, and that was the full-on real pencil and paper. They did all the shadows for Space Jam, and they did all the shadows. This is when you'd have to farm out shadows,
right?
Or 2D animated features, and so they did the shadows for Prince of Egypt, that DreamWorks movie.
Yeah.
They were known for that, and then also that place, I could never get a job for some reason. I would keep applying, never get a job. That's why I started Horseback Solid with my friends. And at that time, then we started to see there's a demand for working smart, working digitally, and so all the traditional animators were having a lot of trouble transitioning into that space. So I felt we had a jump on that, and we're able to really we were compositing all in After Effects at that time, and so that was a really great learning experience.
So I'm
go
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead, finish your thought.
Well, I was gonna say one more fun and so we were also doing interactive stuff. So we were doing this interactive trivia game for the Alamo Drafthouse. I don't know if you know.
Alamo Drafthouse. Yeah, I've heard of it. Yeah,
started in Austin. It's this you eat and drink and have a meal while watching a movie.
Watching a movie, yeah.
Everything's sort of curated for you. So if you're there to watch a kung fu movie, the pre-show is all awesome clips of kung fu movies, and sometimes they would do trivia on the screen. So what we did was turn that trivia into an interactive experience. So we had a partner that like physically built in all these like controllers and all the armrests, so the whole audience could play trivia before the movie started.
Yeah.
And this was pre like when everyone had a cell phone, a smartphone with Bluetooth. Like I feel like 2 more years and it would have been like it would have taken off. But like because it was like physical hardware, it was an expensive endeavor, and it was like a little buggy, and it was hard to fix because you could only like mess with it between movies basically.
Right.
Like teaching like the projectionists how to start the game, like it was like a big hurdle, whereas like now you could have just run everything remotely on the server. Right. Everyone has their phone.
Right. Yeah. It's fantastic how like the Jackbox games and things like that are
and we would try to make it like humorous like that too. Like have a lot of personality.
Yeah.
Like I directed it to make it look like it was like people standing up in the audience. So like all the characters were like silhouettes.
Yeah.
It was almost like a cartoon character was like sitting next to you in the audience asking questions, and then you had to quickly like even the game design of it was interesting because like no one shows up at the theater at the exact same time, so we had to think of games that were sort of almost like short bursts and that got more exciting like towards the end when like more of the people were in the theater ready for the movie to start. So
that's fantastic.
The tingler is under your seat.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I mean, this is kind of a silly question, but it seemed like you guys were kind of like on the cusp of technology, and you kind of mentioned something that makes me think of a phrase I use a lot. Like we are building the airplane while we're flying it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. And so were you guys just kind of stumbling across new projects and trying to invent a way to make the thing work?
Yeah. Oh yeah. And because I was the salesman also, so I'd go to these clients and then of course overpromise and like say, sure, we could do this. Like we knocked out this animated series in this record time, but then that you can't exponentially grow that. Like I'm only one human, so like you can't then take on gigantic projects where it would need like 10 of me to do all the stuff that I sort of promised. So like it got very hard. And then about, I would continually like come out to LA from Austin and pitch shows and get to know execs, and they, but this is like, I pitched Sci-Fu to Cartoon Network before Samurai Jack. Like that's how long Sci-Fu has been around. And so like it felt like I was always pitching shows with like characters of color and like different subject matter, and like just like no one was buying them like at all. Like, it just felt like you had to be in that system with like working on Powerpuff Girls to then get something made. Like
well, because then they know you've worked for them, you've made them money, they go okay, what else you got? You just made me some money, you got anything else in there to make me some money?
Right, look at their pockets, right?
And they want something to be, because there was that big switch over too you were talking about, that time between late 90s and about mid 2000s where Saban got out of doing the Power Rangers, Kids WB went away, Cartoon Network came up, Nickelodeon came up, and there was a lot of stuff kind of falling by the wayside. Then Disney went to doing Hannah Montana and live action.
Right.
And then there was that time where Cartoon Network says, okay, now we're going to do live action. And we're going to have live action hosts, right?
Yeah. I know. Yeah. It's like, so it was like, felt like, everything was a little in flux there. So I would pitch shows, get rejected, but I would like hang on to the ideas. And then about that time, I was writing a screenplay based on my time as a pizza delivery driver. I wanted to do this comedy about pizza delivery drivers. And I was delivering pizza on June 17, 1994, which I don't know if you guys know what that date is, but it's very infamous. So basically I wrote the screenplay about the busiest pizza day ever. And so I was delivering in Houston. And so on that day, it was the Rockets versus the Knicks. Like it was the NBA finals. And then the World Cup was happening. That was all during the day. And then that was the night O.J. Simpson went on the run.
Oh, wow.
Sort of like perfect storm of events that made it the busiest pizza day ever. And I was delivering that day. So like I always had that idea in mind of like doing this sort of like almost like Apollo 13 kind of like style, like all in one day, like holy shit, we're like pizza boys. Like I always thought that would be funny. So I wrote this screenplay. It was called Buffalo Speedway, which that's a street in Houston. That I always thought was like a cool name for a street and like would be a cool name for like an action movie or something like. So I named it Buffalo Speedway, wrote the screenplay, and then I just on a whim sort of started submitting it to these like screenwriting competitions. And then it got into the final draft big break contest. And suddenly I make it to the semifinals list. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. Then I make it to the finals list. I was like, holy crap. And then I make it to basically the top 5. And I'm like, holy crap. So I get flown out to LA for this like ceremony, and like Simon Kinberg, who like he's I think he's doing like a new Star Wars movie now, like a hotshot screenwriter at the time, was handing out the award. I won second place, but like it was the only comedy like in the top 10. So I feel like
you really won for real.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Come on. Yeah.
So then, it gets option, I meet all these Hollywood producers, in LA. So it gets option, but nothing ever happens. So then a year goes by, I get the option back, and I decide, crap, I need to do something with this. Like, it's too good of a story. People are obviously interested in it. And that's when I decided to self-publish it as a graphic novel. So I was like, let me take all my drawing skills that I've learned from animating and like doing animation, and the process I do the animation like in Flash. Let me do that in a comic book. And so that's sort of like, so around that time, it was like getting way too exhausting to like run that business and do this graphic novel. So I was like, let's get rid of the business. We're sort of like on fumes anyway. So, so then I took day jobs back in video games. So I worked for Electronic Arts, which like suddenly like having a day job that paid extremely well was like, whew, like it didn't have to be on me to be the salesman trying to like run the business and create stuff. So like that was a breath of fresh air, like just like having benefits, like healthcare, like suddenly like a dental plan, being able to get new glasses, like. So like Horseback Salad, we ran about 8 years. So it was a good run, but like it felt like,
and you didn't implode. You decided to do which is different, because a lot of people just burn through and then like, that's it.
I didn't want to like go into debt. I didn't want to like, I was very careful about that.
Hate the people you work with and all that. Yeah.
Well, there was a little bit of that, but like, that's to be expected. But yeah. Breath of fresh air, getting the day job in video games, having that fat salary, and then working. That's when we were working on casual games. So it was like the tail end of like CD-ROM games, and then when all the Facebook games, Facebook games at all anyway. But like back then, it was like Facebook games, like Farmville, and doing that was all done in Flash. So there it was back again. My skills were needed. And so I would work during the day, working on games, and then at night working on this graphic novel.
Still in Texas.
Yeah, still in Austin. Yeah.
So you didn't move to LA yet? No.
Yeah. So like right when like Human Code got bought and then we all got laid off, I did have an opportunity. There was another artist named Rob Baldwin, and I kind of regret this sometimes. He left. He was a 3D artist, got a job on Invader Zim. Invader Zim was doing the cell shaded 3D for like some of the effects, and he was like, dude, come to LA, work on Invader Zim. And I'm like, I have my own ideas. I'm gonna have my own animation studio.
That's right.
So I was like, that was always my like, shit. That was like my sliding doors. Like, what if I had gone straight to LA and worked on Invader Zim and worked inside the system a little bit, like, and then started pitching. But
too bad it didn't work out for you.
Yeah, I know. Eventually, it works out. It's just such a longer road, but and so there was a comic book convention in Austin called Staple.
Yeah,
and it was the indie
Staple.
Convention.
Yeah,
it's great. So like, I had gone to it the year before, and then when I decided I was going to do Buffalo Speedway as a graphic novel, I was like, okay, a year from now, I'm going to get a table and have at least the first volume of Buffalo Speedway done. Because, the story's already written. I just need to draw it. So I was like,
that's all.
Yeah, I know. Exactly. And then reality hits. Because, seriously, because in animation, people don't know, you got to draw things on model. Like the character has to look the exact same from 3/4 front as he does front, as he does side, because it can't look like anything has a hiccup when he turns. So the first 10 pages of Buffalo Speedway took me forever because I was trying to be almost super precise like I was in animation. And I was like, oh, this is not sustainable. I'm not going to be able to get this done at all. So then I was still working in Flash, but with the brush tool, and was working
wow,
a lot faster than I was with the line tool. And I sort of developed this new sort of style with it. And that made all the difference. So
were you laying it out traditionally still somehow, or did you make thumbnails?
I was always doing everything, thumbnails, everything was all on the computer. I still do that. Yeah.
That's why
I know, it's crazy. Yeah.
That's what that kind of reminds me. I'm sorry, I'm going to cut you off, but it kind of reminds me when there was a period in indie comics where there were all these new influences coming in, where people were there was a bunch of guys. I don't know if you remember, Mike, the monkey suit guys. And the monkey suit guys turned into Jackson Public and those dudes that were doing Venture Brothers. And all these guys who were kind of from animation and kind of wading around in comics. And they were bringing these whole different ways of doing comic books that nobody had really tried. People were doing things in Illustrator,
right?
And and just kind of figuring it out in a whole different way. And visually, it was striking and different. But maybe I don't know. On your end, did you feel well, I'm going to use the way I know how to tell stories versus I'm going to learn how to use this brush,
right? And it was all about speed for me, because I had this drive and I was like, I want to get this done.
And you had the full-time job, so how would you break up your day? And so how would you break up your work on your independent projects then? How would you pace yourself?
It was all by night. So it was, and it was good doing those day jobs and being an art director. It wasn't like I was wearing out my hand drawing all day at the job. I was the art director, making schedules and checking styles and stuff. So I preserved, my
you just go make it look better. I'm going home. I got to work on my comics.
Yeah. And it was good too because we were a satellite studio. Our bosses were all in San Francisco. We were in Austin, so we didn't have a lot of people breathing down our necks, and it was just sort of us.
Yeah.
Sort of satellite office. So it didn't feel like we were on the EA campus where they're monitoring everything you do. And,
right, sitting on your shoulder and all of that kind of stuff.
So if I could leave a little early if I wanted,
that's right.
A little later.
The NPC is not going to flag you when you try to get out. You got to use your Tron disc.
Yeah.
Well, you know what, Yehudi, you kind of explained your style to me because I don't know if you ever look at somebody's work and you try to just kind of reverse engineer it. How did he do that? And I definitely could sniff out the animation background in you. So does that even lean into you doing backgrounds and stuff? And how maybe you could talk a little, because there are people who want to hear about your graphic novels, but maybe talk a little bit about how you lay out a book or lay out a page. Is it all very digital? Do you ever go to paper and then translate to?
Yeah, no, nothing on paper at all. I basically lay out the whole book in Flash still. It's now called Adobe Animate.
Yeah, wow.
But because I like to page through it on a timeline. That helps me with the pacing of a book. So I like to look at just the timeline, at the macro level.
Right.
And see Act 1 is taking way too long. That's half the book is Act 1. I need to truncate Act 1 and just get to the action quicker. So, and it's easy to move shit around, and I'm copying and pasting all the text from the script file. So, and I'm editing the script as I'm laying stuff out. I'm oh, this joke is too long. It's going to take too many panels. And rewrite the joke in Flash. And so basically, I can get a whole book, a whole graphic novel, sort of on its feet quickly. So like Shazam, I'm working on Shazam, a middle grade graphic novel.
Oh wow, that's great.
It's 170 something pages, and I laid it all out like in a week.
Wow.
And like was able to just like see it at a glance of like, okay, where can I like save those cool double page spread moments, and like it's like because I do so many different projects all at once. It's how could I do them quickly and like really like keep up the momentum with each one?
Right.
So do you also create assets that you can reuse, like backgrounds and cars
So like with Buffalo Speedway, it's a lot of drawing of cars, it's pizza delivery drivers, and I wanted to feel like Cannonball Run, but like with Pizza Boys. So I would make 3D models in SketchUp of cars, and then sort of like position them as I needed them, do the screenshot, and then sort of like drew over them as reference.
Right. So you weren't doing a cell shading, you were doing that manually.
Yeah. But since they were all vector, that was another key to like working in Flash in those early days. Then I had a library of assets. So like I didn't have to redraw the logo on the Pizza Boy's chest every time. It was this vector image that I could size up and wouldn't get pixelated, size down, wouldn't get all muddy. Yeah. So like I was able to like really like crank out Buffalo Speedway, and like all 3 volumes I collected in an omnibus. All 3 turned out to be 336 pages, and it was like, I wouldn't recommend that being your first book. So like, don't do that. Yeah. But it paid off for me because it was this impressive thing. It was like 3 volumes. It was about Pizza Boy. So when I would set up at these conventions and like Staple and like, the C2E2 in its early days, like I would actually like make pizza boxes and sell the book in pizza boxes. And it was like this sort of impressive sort of like table. That's maybe like and I would almost call that the visual speed bump. Like I would get people to like
hot and fresh chef.
Yeah. And I made up like a car topper pizza sign that lit up, so like people were like, just like, because it's so visually overwhelming at a convention.
Yeah.
Anything to get them to stop and look at your table. Like,
but see, now you'd had experience pitching things, talking to executives. You've had experience coordinating projects. So by the time you get to this big, producing this big thing, it's not like this is your first comic and it's Lord of the Rings. It's just one of the things that happens to Jamar and me very often when you're teaching somebody who's young. They come and they've got like it's Star Wars, and it's like no, just do Little Miss Muffet, just do like a nursery rhyme. Don't start out trying to do Star Wars because it'll just collapse on you, and it's really hard to convince people in the beginning.
My nephew has all these ideas, and it's like galaxies and kings and queens and this lineage. I'm like, no. Do a 4-page story about you and your sister. Like that's it. Like stop. Like,
let's start small, right?
Yeah.
Let me ask you. Well, I have a bunch of questions, and I know I want to watch your time. How are you feeling? You all right?
I'm good. Yeah.
All right, cool.
Sun is still up. The skunks aren't out yet.
All right, I'm looking.
You haven't gotten to the Gosling skies yet.
That's right. So just on the strength of your speed, right? And it seems like you juggle a lot of things at the same time. Is there kind of like a method for you doing a lot of projects at the same time? Do you like to just keep busy, or is it something you feel like, I don't know, like what's your kind of like motivation for that?
Yeah, basically like in those early days, it was all like plant the flag of this convention, have a book ready for that convention. Like that's always sort of, and then also have pitches ready at that convention for when the publishers are snooping around.
So how do you break that down? Because a lot of people have difficulty. You're obviously a very top level, the Michael Jordan of multitasking, right? I mean, but a lot of people have a real hard time just like, okay, I'm going to go to a convention. I wanted to get stickers, but I didn't get them done. I didn't get my comic. I mean, you have to know, and you're working a full-time job still and doing this because this is not paying the bills yet.
Right.
Oh, yeah. So how do you go about organizing your time? Do you
And that's what, like, working professionally in games and like being an art director at EA and then eventually Disney Interactive, scheduling. Like I had to make schedules for other artists. So it was like making, I would work my way backwards of like, okay, sending this book to the printer takes a month turnaround. Work my way backwards. When do I need to get the PDF to the printer? Work my way back from that of like, okay, then send it and then get the proof of, some pages and work my way back from that. So it's all like that sort of like method of like working my way backwards. And then like, okay, if I have to get this book done in 4 months, that's 9 pages a day you got to get done. And if you skip a day, then that's 18 pages you got to get done the next day. Like, so like really.
Now, are you good at saying I've bullets this now? I can't keep my schedule, because that's the other thing. People are not honest, like you said. Okay, the next day I'll do 22 pages. I can do that. You know what I mean? Yeah. But then the avalanche is rolling, and then it just ends up being like frustration and disappointment at the end.
Yeah, you got to be disciplined. Like that's the name of the game. You got to be disciplined. Like if you're trying to crank out as much crap as I'm cranking out, like you got to be disciplined. But then there's that magic that happens, right? Like as you're finishing pages, and that was the sort of beauty of me going like, Buffalo Speedway. What I would do that sort of helped was I went to full color with every page. So I would get that burst of excitement of like, holy shit, I did it. This looks good. And I'm done with the page on to the next one. Because I would reuse assets and reuse this, piece of this car, for this page. I would go to full color, from the thumbnail. So I wouldn't have like just the ink version of the book. I would like, go from thumbnail to fully done rendered, page. And then you get that sort of, like that adrenaline rush burst of excitement at the end of every night of like being able to look at 5 completed pages and like, that's sort of like kept me going and kept sustaining me.
Our buddy Eternity Forever says 9 pages a day, a day.
Yeah.
So, I mean, to that point, and I want to ask you a question about your production and how your speed is viewed by the people you work with, like your clients or everything. We've all been at this for a long time, and I know sometimes it's a dirty secret to be too fast. Right. Because if you're too fast,
or let them know how fast you can be.
Yeah.
I haven't run into that as much. It's mainly what because I do. I'm working on like so many things at once. I do work in bursts. So like with Sci-Fu book 2, I was late and they couldn't really see the full book, like fully, done. They'll look at the work in progress PDF and be like, there's no way he's going to finish this in like a month.
Right.
But then I'd go in bursts and then boom, they'd see like suddenly like, 80% of the book is finished, and I would almost have to make them re-believe that I could like hit that deadline.
Right. And I also know that I was talking to Ternatine in the chat just about using the computer, right?
Yeah.
And kind of like our sponsor, Clip Studio Paint. A lot of people have gone from traditional, like we'll talk about Mike, who's like a dyed-in-the-wool traditional artist, but does use Clip for to shave off some time in his day. And it's funny that we talk to more and more strictly digital artists, but I think there's a little bit of maybe a misspeak where I think people just think, and this is probably even bigger for animation, that you just press the art button and art happens. But
because like I all of college was working traditional in the fine arts department and working digital at the community college. So like your hand has to be able to draw that on paper to then make it look good on digital. So now what I do is I thumbnail on Flash still, get the book all on its feet, export those as PNG files, import each. Now I work I basically like in double page spreads just to cut down on like file management.
Yeah.
So I import that double page spread into Procreate.
Mhm.
So I ink in Procreate. Sorry, Clip Studio. But I
Show is over.
I know. Oh, shit. Yeah. So I ink now all in Procreate, and then I export that, and then get flatters to do the base colors. So like I'll give them model sheets of like, okay, on Saifu, Wax's skin tone is this RGB, and then his hair is this. So like go through the whole book and do all those base colors for me. And then I'll sweeten the pages after that, and then pop in the backgrounds. So I'll do big illustrations of backgrounds that I'm going to reuse pieces of.
Right.
Actually, let me share.
Okay, cool.
It's a good time to share.
All right, we're going to check out some of Yehudi's pages here. I'm very excited. All right, I'm going to put this on screen. And guys, if you have any other questions for our guests while we're going along, put them in the chat. Cool.
Yeah, so like what I'll do is like, I'll sweeten it. So I'll add all the like lighting effects and the highlights and the shadows and all the glows and stuff after I get it back from my flatters. And then even like, Dystopia, which is like the alien planet on Saifu, like, I built the city in 3D in SketchUp, and then basically had an artist go through and do like all the multicolor windows for me. And so I paid him just to do like the 7 giant backgrounds with pieces of this like 3D background, and then I'll draw like the neon signs on top, and then I'll be able to reuse that throughout the whole book.
Where do you don't have to like spill your secrets, but I know a lot of people who are always asking for flatters. You know a flatter? You know any good flatters? Do you use the same crew, or do you kind of mix it up, or do you have a?
What's her? Mary Zorlita Bellamy. I want to plug her. She's great. She's really fast. I guess Tony Fleece, my friend, hooked me up with her. And then Dave Wheeler, he helped me on Saifu Book 1. He's great. He's flatting Shazam right now. And then Andrea Bell, she's a great cartoonist in her own right in Chicago. She helped me on Saifu and Chunky. And then my niece, Sophia Hudis, also helped me.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah. So like you see here, like the library, all this like the bookshelf, like I didn't want to redraw bookshelves over and over. So I basically reuse them. And that's the what I like about like seeing the whole book at a glance anyway. It's like I can see like what's important, what's the speech bubble going to cover up anyway, and like really being able to like like this floor, this library floor. I just built it once and then skewed it for whatever background I needed.
It's a visual answer to working smarter. Right.
And I work in layers. So like with this background, you could hide this club, this building in the foreground, and you'd see a full cityscape behind it. Yeah,
I think bringing in that sort of like animation workflow is a real smart way, particularly on this type of book.
Yeah. And like even like this back, I'll do like one nice one-offs. Like this building I didn't really use anywhere, but I wanted to establish like you're back in Brooklyn from the alien planet, so do a nice shot of that. And then but then like the backgrounds like this, like if you hide these 4 panels in the front, you'll see all the cars and stuff behind it, like everything.
Right, it's still there, right?
Because I thought like, okay, maybe I could reuse that overhead shot in something else, or in a poster, or for something else. Like I don't know if it's PC anymore, but use every part of the buffalo. Like
definitely. Because I mean, that's sort of like one of the what I call the give me's in doing a comic, because now you could draw that background individually and change things around, but in the context of you having to produce that type of book in the style that you're doing, would it make a difference to the reader?
Right, exactly. And that's why, like, being a writer cartoonist, it's like the story is first and foremost for me. Like, if I'm getting too distracting them too much with the art and they're not reading the story, you got to find that balance.
Mm-hmm.
And I do like to also like turn off all the speech bubbles, page through it, and see if I can tell what's going on.
Right.
And that also works too. Like you can read the book by not even like reading the actual dialogue if you wanted to.
Yeah, this stuff is so fun. Yehudi, how did you kind of land on telling like kids stuff or middle grade or YA content? How'd you come across that?
So Buffalo Speedway was definitely like R-rated, wanted to be R-rated comedy, influenced very much by Do the Right Thing, Pizza Boy comedy all in one day. But my style is so cartoony that, I would see these kids at conventions like wanting to, read Buffalo Speedway, and I have to sort of like shoo them away and tell them not to read it. And that always felt like, oh crap, like I'm leaving money on the table, basically.
Yeah.
So then I decided, okay, my next pitches are going to be middle grade. I mean, this is even before I even knew the term middle grade.
Right.
So I took all the stuff I had been pitching to Cartoon Network, Nickelodeon, Disney, took those ideas and turned them into graphic novels.
So it's like general audience stuff that's going to appeal to a mass of people.
Exactly. It still have the humor, but just doesn't have the swear words or the nudity.
Right. We'll just edit that part out. Yeah. I love it. Our good buddy Jim Lujan. You know Jim Lujan.
Oh yeah.
Jim has a question for you. Does Yehudi ever see himself making his own animated film independently?
I've been thinking of that, but because I want my stuff to look, I love what Jim does, and I'm so envious. Like this guy works probably even more than I do and cranks out more content than I do. But my style and like what I want my movie to look like Spider-Verse. Like you can't do Spider-Verse on your own.
You can, you'll just die.
Yeah. And speaking of like, so maybe this is like, this comes full circle, but like, Sci-Fu comes out in 2018. Oni, I had pitched Buffalo Speedway to Oni, and they said no. We're not gonna do it. So I've been pitching stuff to Oni because they seemed like that was the publisher that did like comedies and like offbeat stuff, and like that's sort of like who I sort of targeted. So I kept pitching stuff, and then Sci-Fu was the first one that I finally got in the door and did. And it's a hip hop sci-fi kung fu musical. It's like, I kind of say it's like a hip hop Wizard of Oz. Set in the 80s. It's everything I love, all smashed in one book. Yeah. And it finally comes out in 2018, and it's, my number one hit, like the biggest selling thing of, it's sold out of its whole first run in like 3 weeks. It gets selected for the Scholastic Book Club and the Scholastic Book Fair. And so it's huge success. And then, and I had been pitching this as a movie and a TV series, since, for 20 years before Samurai Jack was a thing. And then Into the Spider-Verse comes out, and I'm like, oh my god,
here we go again.
Like they got to the top of the mountain before I did. Like this is like looking at that movie, it was like exhilarating and thrilling and still the best superhero movie ever made in my opinion, but it was also heartbreaking. Like I was like, god damn it, like this is what I wanted to do. I wanted animated graffiti. I don't want it to feel like, like.
And you're not the only person that happens to, because there's 70,000 scripts in Hollywood supposedly circulating all the time, right? Going around in the script, and then you just have to find that, I don't know, that's the luck of like Tom Cruise goes that day, like, I want to play a villain, and I want him to be, an alien. Oh. And then
have to line it up, and it's like there's some magic to it.
Because you had we Bill Ray and Jim Gomez and I had a project in going around Nickelodeon, and you get married to that development person, and then they start telling you to like, I know you have chocolate chips in it,
Yeah.
So what I want you to do is take that out and put garlic in it, because
Exactly.
we're really into garlic right now, right?
Yeah.
And then you make it garlic, and they go, garlic? What the hell is this? It's got garlic in it. Right? We're not buying any garlic this year.
No
the
garlic.
New guy, the
Right.
new guy comes in, or the new gal comes in and goes, that other guy liked garlic. We are no longer buying garlic.
Garlic is
Right?
dead to us. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this happened. So I had a show in development at Cartoon Network called Zero Dimension.
Mhm.
And it was about like it's basically like the fuck ups of like, you know, the Jedi Academy, or like have to step up, and it's like the kids in detention in the Jedi Academy.
The sweat hogs of the
Yeah,
Jedi
exactly.
Academy.
Yeah. So it was in development for 3 years.
Mhm.
Action comedy, like we got all, pitched it, green light to development. We worked on the Bible. We worked on the script. I storyboarded the pilot. We did 3 rounds of pitching the pilot with the boards and me doing all the funny voices. And then regime change, and it's like, no, Cartoon Network's not doing action comedy anymore. We have DC to do that. Like, so we don't need yours anymore. Yeah.
Yep. There's all these things that it's hard to explain to people that are starting out, that can come in and torpedo an idea that has nothing to do with the quality of your thing.
Yeah.
Or your style that you're drawing or that you're writing. It's just like one day they go like, we want live action.
Right.
You're making a cartoon.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I know, it's crazy. So then, I thought when Spider-Verse came out, like, okay, that's it for sci-fi. Like they've done it. That's it. But it had the opposite. Because of the success of Black Panther and Spider-Verse, the bookends of that, my book was right in the middle. Suddenly there's interest in Hollywood, and they look around and they're like, oh shit, we have no animated stuff with brown people in it. Like, what the fuck? Like, so I finally that turned my way, and I can't announce it yet, but something's happening with Sci-Fu, and it totally opened that back up. I got to write the first draft of the screenplay, which that opened even more doors. Now I'm working on a second feature, with a new idea, and I have a short and a pilot in development at Nickelodeon. So it feels like finally stuff is all falling into place.
Right. And you're another one of the perfect examples of overnight success takes 25 years.
And not giving up. Like if I had given up on Sci-Fu, when Samurai Jack came out, like my whole career would have been totally different. Yeah.
That's a fantastic story, and everybody wants to hear about Chunky. But I have a couple questions for you.
Oh yeah,
and then we'll get you out of here. This has been a fantastic episode. I've been on the edge of my seat the whole episode.
I didn't know if I was going to even be able to fill up a half an hour.
Oh, come on, fam! We're professional. All right.
I mean me. It's like,
no, I got you. Don't worry about it. All right. So our good buddy Tim Fielder, who had a fantastic showing on Pencil to Pencil a couple weeks ago, Tim wants to ask you a question regarding options, Yehudi. I've heard that generally the goal should be to get an option with the best producer possible that will ensure a finished product, as opposed to trying to get the most money. How do you feel about that?
Money. You need money,
right?
You got to pay the bills.
Right.
I guess it depends. Like, I've only had stuff optioned by the network. So with Buffalo Speedway way back, that was an independent producer, and that was very little money, but I don't know. Yeah,
until they would partner with then another. Because you see the beginning of a film, it's like Skydance with this and that and this and this.
Yeah.
There's like 17 studios all group the money together to make it.
Exactly. And then you read the list of all the executive producers. All those people get a cut of it.
There's a lot of EPs.
Yeah. But interest in your projects is interest in your projects. Like, I was fortunate to basically get into a bidding war with Sci-Fu. And so that upped the money, and then that's what allowed me to be able to write the first draft of the screenplay. Was because two studios were interested.
So talk about that a little bit, because Now you're a visual artist and you're a storyteller, but you didn't start out being a writer. Then writing a screenplay is a very particular type of writing.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
you got to learn the software. You got to learn the software, and and.
But because in high school I was doing drama and writing plays, I was still writing from way back then. So like I still love reading plays, like like stage plays. Like I feel like more people should do that because it has it has bare bones visual like explanation. It just says he exits stage left. That's it. You got to sort of like come up with what that door is. It's probably a good practice for people to like read plays, like and I would do Shakespeare plays. I would act in Shakespeare plays, and so even at that early age in school, like learning that sort of 3-act structure of storytelling for theater, like really helped me. And so, yeah. And even with First Daughter, I would write those scripts, because it was a narrative kind of game. It was like you had jokes, you got to know the character, you got to know the daughter of the president that was going to save the world, and like she has banter with her friends. And then you jump into the action. So it was like, I feel like, it feels the same now. Like I'm working on the screenplay now. It just feels like the same as when I was in high school writing a play about a Chinese restaurant.
So do you have a folder where you get an idea like popped into your head? Do you just write something down, put it in the drawer, and come back to it?
It's my Google Doc. Like I have a Google Doc, Google Drive of like log lines of all my ideas. And like even when sometimes when you're working on a graphic novel, that is a climbing a mountain task. So when I have a new idea, I like to doodle the cover of it first. And then that helps me sort of solidify the concept about it. And so I draw the cover, I have the log line, and then that's what I have to like sort of save and is ready like in the hopper for like when I have like 5 minutes to spare to flesh it out.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was going to ask, do you still kind of have that like bullets in your revolver just in case somebody asks? Right. It's like, so what do you got? Well,
yeah. Oh yeah. I got
right. it. We're looking something that's like a dog, but for 4 years old, 4-year-olds.
I get that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I got you.
That's the thing too. So like when I had the pizza boxes set up at the convention, Archaea, if you remember Archaea, they got bought by Boom. This is pre-Boom.
Yeah.
Archaea, Mark Smiley, who was like the creative director there, liked my setup, approached me, got to know me. What do you got? And I had 3 like 5x7 mock-ups, like the size of a cover of a graphic novel of the cover, and then the back had paragraph description of the book. So I could hand them 3 ideas.
Yeah.
Like, oh, thanks. And then they were like, oh, we like all 3. Which one do you want to do first?
Yeah.
And that was Pantalones, Texas was my first published book with them. And then Rocket Salvage was the other one. And then they merged, and then they didn't do the third one. But yeah.
I just wanted to ask one question that I see coming up fairly often on Twitter as a subject. So now you had your day job, but if you were trying to make your living just doing your graphic novel stuff, would you had to have a day job to do that, or would you have been able to make your living doing your graphic novels? Because that's just something, like I said, it's been really going around a lot on Twitter. I don't know if you've seen that, but there's a lot of young cartoonists going like, you've got to be anointed by the queen, or you got to have a rich uncle or whatever to make a living as a cartoonist.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Like I basically, so I worked at Disney Interactive, got laid off from Electronic Arts, got a job at Disney Interactive. And then they had a studio in Austin, Disney Interactive studio, where I was still art director. It's still the same setup where I'm like satellite studio in Austin. My bosses were all in San Francisco. So same setup as I had with EA, but then suddenly they laid off everybody in the Austin studio, but kept me. So I was going to be even more remote. So that at that time I was like, oh crap, I can see the writing on the wall. I'm not going to make it another quarter probably. So I asked them like, hey, if I'm going to work remotely, can I move myself to the Glendale studio and then just work remotely from there. I'll be in LA and I'll report to you guys in San Francisco, but then I'll at least be in LA for then possibly, if I got laid off from there, go to an animation studio and get a job there.
Right.
So I, moved myself to LA, got the job in the Glendale campus. That's when I got to work on the Guardians of the Galaxy mobile game. And that one I got to co-write with Dan Abnett. And I got to do the art direction for it. And since it was a mobile game, it didn't, need all these 3D assets. Like, it was like me and this other animator cranking out, all the art for it. And I got to co-write it. And I got to read the script for Guardians of the Galaxy before the movie came out. Then I knew like that, the tone of that, I was like, oh shit, like I'm like, this is going to be a hit. Like, I don't know what made me think that was going to be true, but I read that script and it was so funny and pop cultural references in it were like, I was like, and no one has like preconceived notions of what a Star-Lord should act like. So everyone's going in fresh. I was like, this one's going to be their biggest hit. Like, so I sort of like then, and Rocket Salvage was being worked on at the same time. So it was like, basically I was going to have something ready in the tone of Guardians of the Galaxy right when that game came out.
Wow.
To like send around. So it was sort of like, it was fortuitous. So basically then, still worked at Disney Interactive and then got laid off from there. And that was 5 years ago. And I haven't had to get a day job since then. So like,
I mean, just on the strength of your hustle, right? Because, and even to Mike's point, or even just like people approaching you at a show, because I remember now I was attracted to your table from just the setup. And, I think about how many people just show up. Well, it's starting to change. You're seeing a lot of young people come from like Otakon and those type of conventions where
you got to like have the show.
You have to have like a whole trade dress.
I always thought like, I'm not a name, so I can't just sit there with my head down with like no signage.
Mike Manley could do that.
Mike could do that. Mike could do that.
I've sat next to Mike Manley at so many conventions where he just goes bloop, drops his pages on the table and the line.
No one knows who I am. So I got to do a lot of song and dance to get people. I got to make up pizza boxes.
Hey, I have a question, and I want to talk about Chunky. Then let's get you out of here. Our good buddy Eternity Forever asks, "How do you know what content is right for Scholastic or YA audiences? How do you gauge what will, what they'll sniff?"
I think, because I love cartoons still. Like I still love like cartoons that are on TV, like Saturday morning cartoons. So I feel like that's in my wheelhouse, sense of humor wise, anyway. And really, like when Adventure Time came out, Adventure Time, SpongeBob, both, like there's parts of those shows that feels like, oh, this is a little naughty. Like, is this for kids? Like.
Right. Is it? Right.
Right. Like,
it can go, you can interpret it in like.
Yeah, and that's kind of what Pantalones, Texas, which was my first published book, like had that tone. It was like these little kids that were like little outlaws in this tiny Texas town, and like so like they were, they weren't like your standard Peanuts characters. They were like little bandits. So like, like I felt like I had a little bit like one foot in like a little bit of the edge, and then the other foot in like, oh, this is for kids. There's like it's cartoony and like they're being funny, like.
Right.
So like I feel like I naturally was able to, to develop stuff in that world. And like even like the original version of Sci-Fu, not the one I pitched to Cartoon Network, but I did pitch like an Adult Swim style version of Sci-Fu to MTV Animation, and this was pre 9/11. Like like basically Abby Turkuli, who was a friend of a friend, got me his email, and I emailed him out of the blue. He was the head of MTV Animation. I finally got him to let me send him Sci-Fu. It's hip hop animation. I was like, this is perfect for MTV. You get the stars of your own TV Raps to do voices. Like it's all there.
It's right there.
Right there. And then 9/11 happened, and then I fucking then like didn't hear from him, and like fucking everything the world did, and like So, but yeah, I feel like like the the version of Sci-Fu now was the like after I did Pantalones, Texas. I was like, yes, this felt good. This is funny still. Let me double down on this audience.
So you also have to trust what you like, right?
Yeah,
Like there's cartoons you like and cartoons you don't like, right? And it's the same thing. It's like you feel like I really like this. It's
And I didn't, and I also it was a little bit of, and as maybe this is why it took me a little long to like ramp up. It felt like the audience is now finally coming around to my kind of stuff. Was like there wasn't much out there like it.
Yeah,
like Buffalo Speedway is a sort of, it's not superheroes. It's a comedy about pizza delivery drivers, but it's not a spoof. Like any comedy that was a comic book when I did Buffalo Speedway was usually a spoof of something. A spoof of superheroes, a spoof of fantasy. The Scott Pilgrim was out then, but even that is sort of like heightened. Like I'm living in a video game world, kind of. Like,
right.
But so it was also like aiming to what's not there, almost like when I did First Daughter. I'm like aiming to something that's not already been done 1,000 times on the market, but then also that's like, well, it's not being done 1,000 times on the market, so no one's gonna buy it. So like I feel like I have like those two sides of me.
It's what's fantastic about that is if you watch Facebook long enough or you watch Twitter long enough, there's just a lot of groups of angry people who keep complaining about people doing the same thing over and over again. But at the same time, I don't think these people are really looking for the thing they're asking for.
Oh yeah, exactly. Like it's almost like you hear the complaint when people go to Comic-Con, like they don't have comics at Comic-Con anymore. It's like, well, you're not really looking. Like, are you just going to the Funko Pop booth? And that's it? Like, there's a lot of comics at Comic-Con. Like, there's rows and rows of comics. You're not looking for the comics.
Speaking of that, Yehudi, our buddy Brendan asked, what comics did you crave when you were growing up? Sorry if you answered that already. You did not.
The Tick. Like the Tick was a huge influence. Like I even still draw characters like with that kind of chin, like when I do like superheroes.
The superhero chin.
Like the Tick was huge, and then Bloom County and like Calvin Hobbes, like, and that's why I feel like my stuff now is almost like a merging of all that.
Did you read any comic books, or you straight as
Daredevil, X-Men? Like X-Men, I'm a Mexican Jew, so like finding X-Men at that time when I was like 10, it was like holy shit! Like these guys are being like ostracized and demonized, and like I really like could feel like what the mutants were going through.
It spoke to you.
It hit me. At the right time. The Claremont stuff. Like
So would you say you're more influenced by strips or by comics?
Probably strips. Yeah, like Garfield.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Because it seems like in comics.
Yet I'm terrible. Like I wish I could do a 3-panel comic. I don't know what it is. My first book was 336 fucking pages. Like, I can't get myself to do 3 panels. Like,
it is a very
special
specific
skill.
Yeah, it's a very
even like
specific
one
meter.
panel, like Far Side. Like, God,
those are super hard to do. Yeah.
Like, do you know Lonnie Millsap?
Like, Lonnie's been incredible.
Shit, like, I wish I could do that. Like, my God, like I would have. I'd get to drive in a fancy car around like he does. Like,
so let's get to Chunky. So tell us about your new project.
Yeah. Here, let me share Chunky.
Okay.
So so Chunky is a middle grade graphic novel memoir. You guys see that?
Yep.
Oop, there we go. And it's based on my childhood growing up in Houston, Texas, the Astrodome in the 80s, back when there was an Astrodome.
Yeah.
My father is this amazing athlete. Like he's was a star football player, and me, I'm not coordinated, have a lot of health issues. So it's sort of about me as this fat kid with health issues, like basically like trying out for different sports and trying to live up to my father's expectations of what I should be.
Yeah.
So when I was a kid in kindergarten, I had to have my lung removed because of a bad infection.
Wow.
So I always had that sort of like looming over me as a kid, and then I always had like a weight problem, and just like a combination of different things. So the story is about Hootie. It's me, and how and that's my dad, all buff, and athletic, and he can fix up houses. He does everything. And so feeling lonely and surrounded by these comedy movie posters, I sort of invent this imaginary friend for myself to help cheer me on.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out that Chunky is an imaginary mascot. So he, cheers me on as I'm sort of trying out for all these different sports. And sort of the catalyst of the story is my parents need me to lose weight. So they're like, hey, you should lose weight. And the good way to lose weight is to enroll in sports. So every chapter is me trying out for different sports. So first I try out baseball because I'm like, oh, Babe Ruth was fat. So he was good at baseball. Let me try baseball. So it's all true things that happen to me in baseball, where it's the only time I ever got on base was when I got smacked in the face with the ball. And so all the trial and tribulations of me at sports. And I started to piece together all these stories of me as a kid, and so this is a real thing that happened to me. In Little League was my the Little League uniform did not fit on me.
Yeah.
And so my coach literally cut it open and taped it together with athletic tape.
Wow.
And it's this is
wow. This is not a scarring moment. No.
Right. Yeah. In front of everybody. Yeah. Everyone's laughing at me. And it's this might be, the rule was I had to wear a uniform, but this does not honor the spirit of the rule. So
what do your parents think of this? Now, do you show this? Do they?
Yeah. So it was interesting because when I was coming up with this idea, I went to dinner with Raina Telgemeier.
Raina's great. Yeah.
So she's the queen of all these middle grade graphic novels.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went to dinner with her after New York Comic Con. She was a big fan of sci-fi, and so we had this dinner. We're just exchanging stories. We're roughly the same age, so we're finally we get to talk as peers. In comics, you feel like you're either hanging out with 15-year-olds or 90-year-olds. It's your age for some reason.
Yeah.
So when I was telling her all these stories, because what she does is it's magical. What she does, I feel like the heart she puts into these books and the real life stories. I just felt like that was hard, and she kept encouraging me, no, put these funny stories about your childhood into a story, and then that's sort of where Chunky got born.
Mm-hmm.
And so that actually I put together the sort of pitch for Chunky, and then got interest from some publishers, and then I leveraged that interest to get myself a literary agent.
Mm-hmm.
So I signed with Inkwell Management, Charlie Olson, and then he loved the proposal I put together for Chunky, and he's like, let's auction this off. And he was like, we're going to send this to all the publishers and then give them a week to come up with a bidding price. And I'm like, what? That was so foreign to me, because I'm usually begging indie publishers to please, Oni, publish this for me. I wasn't used to the auction. So the auction was stressful, but we went with HarperCollins, and then suddenly it's this 6-figure 2-book deal. And I'm like, holy shit. This is it. It almost felt like that time when Hasbro picked up First Daughter. It was it felt like I went up a level. I leveled up. And and
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
And this is kind of the new air that a lot of cartoonists are breathing now, which is very foreign to us, right? Coming from the other side of the table, where you're just hoping somebody walks by, and catches a hook on their mouth from your fishing line, into a place where now you have advocates and representation talking for you, or even saying, you know what, don't even talk to this dude, I got this. And it's just a very weird world to be in, but I think this is kind of where things are headed, and I wish comics was more like this.
Well, it was also at that, you go back a little bit and you had to be something really grim, like Mouse.
Right.
It couldn't be anything funny. If it was funny,
it wasn't. Dogman and Raina, those two things hitting big, changed the game. And I felt Pantalones, Texas, I feel has the, Dogman is great. Like it's funny. Like it's funny first. And I felt like, reading Dogman, I was like, yes, I can keep up with this world. Like I feel like I'm confident enough in my jokes and my cartooning skills to do that. But it was like before I had an agent, I had heard DC was doing middle grade books, and when there was like Zoom and Ink, and I kept trying to get in, no response.
Yeah.
Even my editor, who was the editor at Archaea, who was the editor on Rocket Salvage, she moved over to DC and was like trying to get them to like consider me. Nothing. I had to get an agent before they even responded. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, funny how that works, isn't it?
Yeah. And now I'm doing two middle grade books for DC.
I guess it's sort of like it's in Hollywood. You can't pitch if you don't have an agent.
Yeah. And it's like, it's tough. Yeah.
And and what I've said, because people have asked me the same kind of questions about literary agents, is I say there's nothing stopping you from walking into Random House with your pet project and pitching it to them, and they'll gladly make you a deal. You may not like the deal,
right,
but it's not, and in a weird way, I can't even really fault them for taking advantage of somebody who doesn't know how the business works.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? It's kind of,
that's cartooning. That's the history of cartooning, right?
Yeah.
Right. And and I don't want to come off like a monster or something, but it's kind of like you need to be on your business before you walk in the door, or you get took. Unfortunately, that's just how it works.
Well, even like my original contract with Lion Forge for Fun World, and this was before they merged with Oni. Like there was a little clause in there that said like, oh, they have the right to do my next book. Like, and
it's like real small, right?
Yeah, no, yeah. Let's get that out of there.
And and I know a lot of young people, or not even young people, just people trying to get in the business, are either petrified of showing anybody their work because they think someone will steal it.
Yeah,
or
you got to get over. I was over that quick, like
right. Or they sign whatever somebody puts in front of them,
right?
Which is just almost as bad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So do you have any advice for people who are like, maybe they're on a new precipice of their career and now have people sniffing around them? Any good advice on how to kind of wade through that water?
I mean, it's a business. You got to treat it as a business. It's not a hobby. Like if you want to be a professional artist, it's a business. So yeah, exactly.
Did you do things like title searches, trademark searches, copyright searches when you come up with a name?
No, I usually do like you can register a pitch with the WGA, even though I'm not like in the Writers Guild at all. You can pay $20 and then it like sort of like stamps a number on it and it has a date and it sends you a certificate. So I would do that. And then I would also like buy the URL for like whatever.
Which is
Turbo Pizza is the pizza place in Buffalo Speedway. So I bought turbopizza.com.
Which is almost more important these days to have than to have a copyright next to your name. Yeah. Our buddy Jim Luhan asked, Yehudi, where's the best place to buy your books and will benefit you the most?
Probably on my store, supermercadostore.com.
Gotcha. Yeah. And you can get there from. Can you get there from there?
You can get there from there. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. And for the dot pizza.
I love dot pizza. That's amazing. So, Mike, do you have any last questions for Yehudi so he can get out of here?
I guess what do you have? Say 2 or 3 top things you would advise somebody who's like in their early to mid 20s trying to get in. There's a lot of people, like I said, I asked this because I see a lot of people on Twitter sort of complaining about the world isn't their oyster.
But I mean, it feels like it's so much easier to put your stuff online and get seen now. Like I don't know, like you can self-publish on Webtoons, right? Like,
yeah, I did.
Do that. That's I know. Like everything's migrated away from Tumblr, but Tumblr used to be the place that you just like you put pages up. But like my advice is, and this kind of goes with people who are afraid to share their stuff that will get stolen.
Mm-hmm.
It won't get stolen if it's only a story you can tell. Like that's the key. Like, who's going to tell Chunky? Like, I'm the only one who's going to be able to tell Chunky.
Yeah.
Sci-Fu, I'm the only one who came up with Sci-Fu. Like, I've been pitching that 20 years. No one's been able to do it. Like, I'm the only one.
Mm-hmm.
So like whenever I see, like, I'm on panels at conventions and I see like, oh, this person has same old superhero thing. Like, didn't feel like them at all. Like, I just feel like that's the wrong lane to go down. Like, if it's a superhero story with a twist, that's something special to you, then yeah, that's awesome. Like,
right.
But yeah, so make it, tell a story only you can tell, and then knock it out of the park. Like, and make your first mistake on your own dime. So like drawing the first 10 pages of Buffalo Speedway in that hyper like detailed style, that was the mistake on my dime. Like, I didn't make anyone else pay for that mistake. So like, I had to redo the pages, myself, because it was being self-published. So I got all the mistakes out of the way on my own dime.
Oh man, I have one more question for you, because we don't ask this enough. How do you feel about working with assistants or bringing in other people to help you finish projects? Do you have to be a lone wolf and get things done besides your flatters, or do you farm things out if you have to?
I wish I could farm out more than I do, but like even with Fun World, like, I wanted to do a different style that I thought was going to be a little, faster, which it did not turn out to be fast.
Yeah.
So that one, I wanted to look like concept art of like amusement parks. To almost look like Mary Blair shapes and textures, and like, so no ink outlines. So I fucked up. So then, like, when it came time to like needing to do all the backgrounds, only I could do them.
Right.
Only I could go, because it went straight from thumbnail to color. And it's not like I could just ink it and then pass off the coloring to someone else. It's like, it's all color.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah.
I do need to like teach a couple people my whole weird process, because it is a different process. It's like, I ink in Procreate, export, build my pages in layers and like all these folders and each character has a mask folder that I can do a gradient underneath, and like, so it's like, it's very detailed and like very persnickety way of doing it, but it's a way I can do it quickly. Yeah. So with Shazam, I'm sort of like baby steps taking Dave through that next step of like, okay, now here's how I do the gradient, and then here's how I do the highlights. Here's how I do the shadows. So hopefully I can just farm out all that stuff. Basically, now I'm on the hook for like 6 more books that I'm working on. And it's a good problem to have, but like,
that's it. I'm going to get a neon sign to put in the back of my studio that says "Good Problems."
Yeah.
Now, do you work? How many days a week do you work?
As many days as there are on the calendar, like every single day. Okay.
Because that's the other thing, I think a lot of people, when they get into doing this and you have opportunity, that's a stage some people kind of burn out. They flare out at that thing where you like, I work basically 7 days a week. Yeah. Most cartoonists I know kind of work 7 days a week.
Oh, yeah. And that's kind of what I also like working digitally, is so that I can move my workspace around. So when I'm inking on the iPad and my back is hurting from like leaning over the desk all day, I can lay on my stomach in bed and do some of the sort of like the more grunt ink work. And it's nice to be able to like move, physically move my body. Because if you're in that same position 7 days a week, it takes a toll. Like, people don't realize the physical toll it takes to make a graphic novel.
Eternity says you got to get the 9 pages in, fam.
That's right. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's let Yehudi get on with his day.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for hanging out with us, man. Where'd the time go? The time just melted.
I know. This is crazy. Yeah.
That's the magic of pencil to pencil.
Yeah.
So we've been plugging your site all night, but maybe give us a place where we can follow you on the socials.
Yeah,
give a shout out
on Instagram is probably the best, and that's at Super Mercado Comics.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much.
Buy Chunky. Everybody needs to buy Chunky.
Buy Chunky.
Buy Chunky. And Yehudi, if you want to close the door with us, we're going to say our goodbyes. We do a little thing at the end, so you can just follow along. Guys, thank you guys so much for another spectacular episode. If you're watching this later, there's almost Mike 2 years of podcasts to look at.
Yeah.
A year and months. So go back to our archives and see some of these superstars we have on here, and I bet you'll learn something before the episode is over. Thanks so much to our guest Yehudi Mercado, to Mike Manley, as always, and to our disembodied face in the sky, Brett Blevins, who's shining his light on us. I'm Jamar Nicholas. We'll see you guys. Oh, actually, no, we're off next week.
We're off next week.
We're off next week, but we'll be back the week after that with a very special guest. I'll announce it soon. So let's say goodnight, and go ahead, Yehudi. We're going to do it. Remember to wash
those Kirby hands.
Wash your Kirby hands. Oh, nice hands. That's good. That was a good Kirby right there. All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Thanks.